Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. The change in Johnny Depp's style expression is more than just a minor alteration. It's a marked choice in casting change that admirers perceive as representative of a more intimate evolution of the formerly fanciful and quirky characters that comprised a large portion of his. It appears that a prior career has taken a backseat to individuals who possess greater based on the complexity of emotions and human susceptibility to this development, implies that Depp might be purposefully choosing positions that enable him to investigate the procedure or even convey the wounds from his past in a significant manner rather than the creative escape that, during his Jack Sparrow portrayals, or the characters from Mad Hatter who depended heavily on makeup that is quirky and accentuated his post-trial physique. The performances are unpolished, unrefined, and fans with greater emotional sensitivity contend that this change in style could be less regarding business strategy and more information on catharsis. Recovery and authenticity is one instance when fans frequently, the nuanced manner in which Depp handles. There is a seriousness to his recent characters, to his live feeling performances, as if his characters' weight reflect Depp's emotional struggles. As he has suffered, there is less exuberance and more reflection, less spectacle and further subtleties. Even his performances' silences seem louder, now possessing a depth of feeling that wasn't consistently evident in his previous roles, that onlookers highlight as proof that Depp is no longer just presenting the personas he is assuming pieces of himself. This change is said to be a direct result of the significant psychological damage to his legal conflicts and private disputes have placed on him. The court case, the worldwide media circus, the criticism and back up the personal information of his. All of these private matters were made public. Experiences have, in fans' eyes, radically changed his character as a man and as an artist. In addition to the filmmakers and Depp has been drawn to authors, are also representative of this new phase, for which many of them are renowned, constructing tales with a focus on characters that emphasize internal strife, existential crisis, and emotional trauma reflection. These are not high-profile, expensive films. Created to make a lot of money at the box office, they're frequently independent passion projects, movies or dramatic productions with a powerful conceptual core that contributes even more validity of the hypothesis that Depp is seeking, positions that enable him to recover his voice and change the way the public views, nor by use of news conferences or interviews, but using layered provocative, using first-person accounts to tell stories. Many frequently misinterpreted men, conflicted or coping with a damaged reputation. Depp might be purposefully uniting with legacy. His craft, while being honest with each role's admirers, is a representation of more than just a job. Voyage with a message in a bottle that was discarded. To a group of people who have walked alongside, fans continue to support him despite the crisis. To analyze the points of intersection between the private life of Johnny Depp and professional endeavors, the incorporation of, in this examination, his musical pursuits has introduced an additional layer to the complex tapestry that they think he is incorporating Depp's music. Especially his more recent partnerships fall under the listeners reading lyrics under a microscope and tonal selections for clues about the emotional turmoil he has gone through in the social circles of his devoted followers. Bass tunes that discuss topics such as inner agony, betrayal, lost love, and the pursuit of justice is being construed as barely concealed manifestations of his sentiments, of the experience with amber traces from herds that might have once been considered to be broad manifestations of human emotion, is now regarded as profoundly in autobiographies. The setting has evolved drastically, and the lens has also, which is used to display his artwork. Depp's. Additionally, on-stage conduct has become as speaking briefly but clearly. Comments made at performances are frequently enigmatic. Poetry have gained newfound importance, such as his citation, "To overcome the falsehoods people tell about you in a live performance," wasn't only a casual remark, but for many admirers, it was a confessional moment. But he chose not to, from identifying names. The tone and timing were sufficient to spark a broad conjecture in a society where every phrase is carefully examined in the figures and gesture. Such declarations are seen as deliberate, particularly coming from someone as creative and media-savvy determined, using Depp talk footage of that. Thousands many replays of the same moment, with users contributing their own remarks. Reddit's emotional responses and hypotheses threads served as a sanctuary for analytical analysis of song lyrics, cross-referencing court interviews, transcripts, as well as additional media to produce timeframes and hypotheses that these fan-driven, speculative efforts indicate the strong bond Depp has established with his audience, a bond established not only on performance, but on shared experience, as well as emotional resonance beyond his performances and music. Depp's changing one's public image has become crucial. Part of this alleged story, Depp's distant and frequently enigmatic storyline is over, who had provided interviews filled with misdirection and metaphor in his place, is a man who is currently still measured, speaks more clearly and emotional transparency when talking about his interviews. There's a purposeful integrity that wasn't consistently apparent in he no longer appears to be as committed to maintaining the enigma that once described him. But now he talks about his struggles, his process of reconstruction, and the insight gained from surviving tremendous disruption on a personal and public level. Fans view this as an additional component of the puzzling proof that his present trajectory is more than merely taking back prestige in the workplace, but regarding emotional openness and development enhancing. The individuals Depp is with are even more intriguing. Decides to collaborate with in this next phase. Jean Dubarry's director, Maywen, is well known for accepting and pushing limits contentious stories. Her choice to cast Depp was a statement in and of itself, which seems to disapprove of cancel culture and promote artistic excellence over public scandal, in which their cooperation was framed by certain media sources as a dangerous gamble. However, Depp's admirers saw it as more than, because it was interpreted as a kind of symbolic disobedience. Indication that he was taking back his autonomy through collaborations that aided his vision of reality. Much like Depp's contemporary artistic endeavors, an experimental film in which themes of internal conflict and identity resistance are crucial and are also understood by means of. These initiatives typically center on this lens, around those who encounter societal condemnation or experience severe figures with personal reckonings whose arcs reflect Depp's personal struggles with his appearance's actuality and perception at international film festivals and art displays have also drawn a lot of. These events frequently attract notice, pieces that investigate social inequalities, sensationalism in the media and individual. The role of redemptive Depp in such areas are seen as both contemplative and, according to strategic fans, he is purposefully putting himself in the company with topics and authors who are aware of the intricacies of public demonization and the difficult road to one's own salvation. His involvement turns into a kind of using narrative control to reinterpret his image without resorting to counterattacks from tabloids. However, through a common artistic vision, it's like though every movie, song or piece of art. The chapter on appearance is part of a larger first story that is developing, in which Depp isn't simply responding to his history, but taking proactive changing the perception of this fan's interpretational strategy has developed a kind of legend around Depp's. His newest efforts involve transforming his career into an autobiographical art that is a live and breathing component. Regardless of each and every detail, and perceived reference is deliberate. Emotional reality that they can relate to cannot overlook his audience, which consists of numerous who came after the well-reported trial and the consequences of it with severe investment. Observe their own emotions of injustice and tenacity reflected in Depp's development via music videos. And Depp's public involvement appears to behaving a lengthy conversation, with people who supported him less during straightforward communication, and more via the symbolism and sincerity of his feelings work. This connection has only been stronger in. He has changed in the last few years in the views of numerous people, from a misinterpreted actor becomes a multifaceted, timeless representation of survival as well as artistic. Revive. The contrast between Jonny and the post-trial careers of Depp's and Amber Heard trajectories is still captivating. Onlookers, especially those who are deeply involved in the protracted and well-known story that came after their turbulent divorce. In court cases, whilst Depp has apparently, he accepted his artistic past from his own experiences into parts that go deeply into grief and personal dispute. Heard's strategy has being marketed differently. She has maintained comparatively limited visibility in the media appearances, as well as her choices in acting, observing the high-stakes legal proceedings that revealed personal information about their personal life to the general public. Heard appeared in just a few projects, often away from the limelight of Hollywood, choose more sedate, private streets. For restoring this disparity has not unnoticed. Commentators and fans have not understood this discrepancy merely for professional reasons, market dynamics or strategy, but as a conceptual difference in each figures has decided to analyze and display their identities to the world. Following a conflict in Depp's roles in fan conversation are frequently deconstructed as meticulously chosen containers of self-reflection, artistic fortitude, and emotional openness. They think he's utilizing his characters to communicate, the screen to deal with humiliation and sadness, survival, followed by a reaffirmation of self. Esteem. Heard's retreat from the. In contrast, some people perceive mainstream as evasion or even a calculated retreat decision to shield herself from additional public examination, or possibly to give time for rebranding. In this interpretive context, Explore the Depp and Heard career sections are viewed less as personal professionals, choices and more, as a continuation of a reconstructed courtroom drama in the kind of public and creative identity. Fans frequently talk about the notion that while Depp battles to protect his reputation, by Heard aims to restore her craft, by restraint and absence to some. This story is about visibility versus confrontation, of invisibility versus escape. Silence versus reclamation. Readings are significantly influenced by parasocial interactions in which fans experience closely associated with the celebrity. They follow the sense of Jonny Depp, of emotional intimacy, has only increased over time. The court case grew in importance. Supporters of this connection didn't just see as they rallied outsiders, argued, protested, and supported him, as even if they were the ones who fought him. Psychological closeness causes admirers to consider Depp as more than merely an actor, emblem of conflict, and they undergo emotional atonement. Devoted to each and every role he plays, he writes lyrics, and every public appearance he creates the meaning that allocate to his work, although it might not always represent reality, but it also shows their perception that is potent in and of itself. Correct. The idea of the artist who is tortured is a classic romantic ideal that in depth many admirers perceive a man who personifies. It is an extremely expressive archetype. Person who has been wronged by the world and as art as a means of promoting justice and change. Even for people who don't purchase, acknowledge the deeper symbolism. Depp's ongoing significance in the cultural dialogue is uncommon in the majority of public personalities who encounter the type, the investigation and controversy that surrounded. He frequently disappears or finds it difficult to turn to their previous level of prominence, but appears to have deviated from that pattern. In addition to staying visible, he also consistently engaged in artistic endeavors, provoking conversation with his decisions. These performances, which by themselves provide the story that he is on a purposeful voyage of reinvention, which is not limited to public perception, but in individual language, regardless of whether the meaning in whether the art is deliberate or not, its effect is extremely profound. Tales he chooses to use themes to tell that reflect his distorted life, imperfect but serious man looking for characters of salvation lost in a world that, on the other hand, has miscalculated them. Amber Heard's silence throughout her career is equally provocative, but in a very distinct way that some people understand her withdrawal as an essential step in the direction of personal recovery or defense against additional. Some perceive it as an implicit insult. Recognition of the public's toll trial on her public persona. She's discussed in a few interviews, feeling watched and in danger, and those comments provide an additional level of comprehension to her choice to stay out of the spotlight. For many observers, this contrast is still present. As Depp approaches his forward-facing rebellion against the restricted Heard's retraction is incorporated into the broader, the first story arc that keeps transpire outside of courtrooms or headlines, but with each creative and any of them, makes this as a public gesture. Larger context influenced by public sentiment and media framing makes things more difficult. The capacity to impartially evaluate either criticism of fan theories by the parties' actions, be advised that these interpretations can occasionally stray into the realm of conspiracy, giving decisions deep significance. It might have been created for practical or very unconnected factors. In the end, actors have contracts, financial factors, as well as accessibility, and not all songs or movies is full of symbolic meaning, but even skeptics acknowledge that not many famous people evoke the type of intense close. The legendary investment made by Johnny Depp is not just observed, he is examined, mythologized, and interpreted in the end. What these fans' interpretations show that is not always the exact truth regarding Depp's or Heard's motivations, but a more profound reality of how viewers today consume renown in a time when individual professional output and storytelling are irreconcilably linked, where public figures serve as both symbols and producers. The boundaries between life and art are blurred because, according to Johnny Depp, each script, lyric, and teamwork turn into a stage where fans seek closure, confirmation, or relationship with his post-trial. When viewed from this perspective, the work becomes more. It turns into testimony rather than amusement. If that is the result of deliberate planning or just our presentation of a keen observer, the outcome is the same portrait for the whole public. Of a creator who, in the opinion of many, transformed suffering into meaning and created mastery of perseverance in the face of destruction, even in the words of Johnny Depp, contributed to strengthening the feeling of fans' fascination with symbolism and mystery attribution to his professional choices when questioned point blank in a recent interview if his post-trial endeavors were intended to repair his reputation. Depp answered with a mysterious, "But I'm just telling stories," is a telling phrase. If others notice something about them, perhaps that provides more insight into their behavior, through rather than regarding me. The comment initially appears to serve as a straightforward diversion for Depp to avoid the difficult question, but for fans, it was much more than that. 1. More breadcrumb in a series of interpretive significance they perceived in that answer, a silent acknowledgement, an indirect confirmation of what he knows, his work's emotional resonance, and that he's deciding to let other people to recognize themselves in it by not categorically affirming or refuting the speculation. Depp maintains his creative independence, while providing his listeners with authorization to uncover more profound levels of actually. There's a subtlety about his performances, but effective tactic that has made it possible for him to stay emotionally, artfully sovereign and easily accessible. The conversation around Depp's career after trial hasn't stayed limited to fan communities. Only it has been magnified and examined in the contemporary celebrity's digital ecosystem, social media sites for culture, such as YouTube, Reddit, and Twitter. Now have emerged as the main venues where stories are contested, and symbolism is unraveled and fresh hypotheses emerge. The Jachi Justice's hashtag for Jonny has acted as a rallying call that reappeared. Once more, each time Depp makes an appearance displays signs or a tune on a new movie, but it's far more telling is the emergence of specialized hashtags, such as Jack Depp's story of redemption, which frames his creative path as a serialized change arc, similar to a literary user's of Hero's Path, share side-by-side videos. Modifications that contrast his early imaginative roles to his more recent grounded voiceovers over characters discussing pain, of survival and rebirth. TikTok. His facial expressions are examined by the creators. In interviews, breaking out each a half smile and an elevated eyebrow for clues, YouTube tries to understand double meanings. Even more deeply, creating videos that last an hour, contrasting the format of his most recent movies to his legal timeline struggles with Heard, drawings in a symbolic, similarities that imply Depp is telling his narrative using metaphor in this digital conduct is indicative of a larger pattern in how the internet is where people devour celebrities, age-old conventional celebrity culture once flourished on distant stars and mystery, were greater than their audience and carefully chosen private selves, and divided, yet, in the hyper-connected world of today, a time when knowledge is instantaneous and in real time, public opinion is formed by the line separating one's own story from professional output has become more hazy. Then Depp's life has received recognition for lives with a magnifying glass on it, has changed into a dynamic story in which fans are immersed, connect with his work rather than merely following it. Reinterpret it with it, and in certain situations, co-author it. Emotionally, participatory celebrity. Storytelling transforms the audience for artists. Relationship, making it a sort of cooperative myth. Making, regardless of whether intended or not, has turned into the topic of a shared cultural exercise in storytelling building for a large number of his fans. This procedure is extremely intimate during the court case involving Amber Heard, particularly during the televised fans of the defamation trial, developed a strong, many people's emotional commitments were seen as deep, not just as a famous person involved in scandal, but as a representation of individual battle. Someone who was similar to them had been misinterpreted, wrongly charged, or injured by someone they trusted. His suffering turned into a mirror for both his and their battle, for as a result, vindication felt collectively every. He adopts a fresh persona for each lyric he writes, and each time he appears in public, he creates a new chance for. It's not for fans to achieve emotional closure. It's not just about Depp's recovery. The resonance between them is reciprocal, even if unspoken in this way. Art turns into treatment for the artist as well as for the. In the meanwhile, critics have highlighted out the risks associated with this type of emotional commitment. They cautioned, putting too much metaphorical meaning on, making creative decisions runs the danger of confusing performance with one's own reality. Not every part Depp plays is inevitably a mirror of his personal existence, as not all song lyrics ought to be understood as autobiographical. Performers are employed by several explanations for financial creativity, professional, and presuming that every choosing to send a coded message can result in troublesome additional over-identification. There's the moral dilemma of continuing astery that might overlook the original legal case's complexity and the individuals concerned. But even those who criticize Depp's career must acknowledge, has surpassed the traditional limits of celebrity. If he so chooses, he has made his art inseparable from his public personal mythology. His admirers see more than just him. A narrative, a conflict, and a symbolic trip in the direction of redemption through the use of an interpretive lens. Jonny Depp's career additionally indicates the need for catharsis in society and justice during a period of chaos in the world, when a large number of people becomes disenchanted, with organizations split along ideological lines and unsure of the truth. The tale of Jonny Depp offers a sort of sentimental anchor. It provides a story of falsely accused of being innocent, endurance in the face of difficulty, and success through inventive fortitude. For admirers who think he was unfairly vilified as he made his way back to the screen is more than just a means of amusement. It's about seeing a moral awakening transpire in reality. Additionally, the thematic components of his job stories following the trial of misunderstood statistics, hurt men attempting to recover their sense of self, and emotional conflict merely serves to reinforce this feeling. Many figures with poetic alignment, such as King Jean du Barry and Louis XV, aren't merely historical roles. They serve as substitutes for the individual who represents the fallen king, formerly held in high regard and then deceived even when Depp pulls away from such interpretations of the roles themselves appear to have a louder voice than any public. The end. Denial might determine whether Jonny Depp is purposefully planning a redemptive story, or just using his intuition to guide his career and opportunity. The outcome stays the same. He is now regarded as a cultural icon, living example of resiliency, whose interpretation of the work is based on what it symbolizes, what it says about his career, now resides in the nexus of curated autobiographies and artwork, not only by him, but by a worldwide fan base, who perceive reflections of their own experiences as long as he keeps going on his journey to produce, perform, and distribute portions of himself with the environment that the voyage will continue to serve as a canvas for individuals to endeavor that symbolizes hope and healing. And in by doing this, Jonny Depp elevates himself above, and performer turns becomes a story's emblem. Remaining in the